Liz had discovered Sergio's dad was having an affair. Sergio was afraid if Liz did anything about it or the dad got too upset that he would lose his job working with the father. So I don't know that you would call that a great relationship.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to True Crime Unsolved. This is the place where we tackle the stories that the TV networks won't touch. All right, guys, we've got another comment reaction video for you today. First, we want to give you some updates on the channel. I know that we've mentioned this before, but we are speaking with Matt Miller. We're just trying to nail down a day where we're going to interview him. This is Chance Engelbert's friend, who he was actually on the phone with the night that Chance disappeared. In fact, Matt may be the last person that Chance spoke to, as far as anybody knows. He is committed to doing the interview with us. Right now, we're trying to get him in next week, which will actually be the week that this video airs. So hopefully, the week that you guys are watching this, we will actually be interviewing Matt, and then we'll have to, do some editing on that, and then we'll fit it into the calendar. Michael Ritchie, the investigative officer on the Liz Barraza case. We did film an additional interview with him as like sort of a companion because our original interview with Michael got cut off a little bit early because he was dealing with his own personal stuff. So what we did is we went back to him and we shot a little kind of like phone interview with him where we talked strictly about the investigation into Sergio and Sergio's father. So I know that's something of interest to a lot of you guys. So and the second part will be going up on the 12th, which is the next Friday. Jennifer Kessie's suspect video that we shot is going up on September 26th. So that's us just kind of breaking down the primary suspects that have been looked into in the case. I think there might be some surprises in there for some of you guys. I don't know if everyone's aware of everyone that was looked at, but keep an eye out for that one. And lastly, we've gotten a lot of inquiries through our Instagram account and through our YouTube channel as well of people coming to us with cases and asking us to cover them.
Having people recognize what we're doing and say, hey, this is cool and helpful, and come to us with cases that need attention is awesome. That's exactly what we were hoping would happen. And look, this channel's only been out a month, basically, as of the recording of this video. And we've already gotten several people knocking on our door asking us to cover their case. So that's amazing. I mean, imagine where we'll be in a year from now if that continues. So yeah, thank all of you. Thank you for hitting us up. And thank you, those of you who are just watching and taking an interest, because that's what's really doing it. All right, this comment is from Brittany Tidwell, 1754, on the Liz Barraza case. She says, "I don't want to come off as racist here," which is always an amazing intro to a YouTube comment. "I don't want to come off as racist here, but my husband is Mexican, and his cousins, etc., have all openly bragged that they could basically kill somebody and just go back to Mexico. I've often wondered if he, I think she means Sergio, knew anyone who still had ties to Mexico and had no problem disappearing with that money, because you can't convince me that Sergio didn't see that up. It was absolutely someone he paid off. Also, a lot of my husband's Mexican family, like the ones who live there still, are super short, even the men, even though he's over 6 feet tall." I think she means your husband there. "So I could totally believe the man in a dress thing, but man or woman, Sergio knows who it was. I've never even seen one clip of him actually crying or upset. He more looks nervous and fidgeting at the press conference than in the vigil. He's awfully composed. I pray one day this is solved. A lot of cold cases have been getting solved. Praying this one's one of the next." All right, so there's a lot to unpack there. Let me just take it one quick thing at a time, and then Miles will toss it to you. So we've already kind of gone over in last week some of the things people have observed about Sergio, and like, maybe we haven't seen him cry enough, or maybe he's crying on camera, but people can't see tears, or he acted weird at certain, events, dedications, press interviews, things like that. We talked about it. Yeah, yeah, you guys have all noticed it. We've noticed it too. I think it could mean a lot of things. People have different reactions to this stuff, and sometimes it means they're guilty, and sometimes it just means their spouse was murdered, and that's really an unusual thing. And maybe they're just a weird person who does weird, things, or we're reading too much into it. We don't really know what it means. I think it's all worth taking note of. And I won't go any really further into it than that, because we spent a lot of time on that subject last week. So if you want to hear us really go off on that, go check out last week's reaction video. What we haven't talked about yet is the idea that Texas is right on the border with Mexico, and there's a lot of back and forth traffic. We know there's drug smuggling, there's human trafficking, there's arms smuggling. It's a porous border, famously. It's a huge political issue in both countries for that reason. So, is it conceivable that someone could cross the border from Mexico to Texas, commit a murder for money, and then go back, and it would be really hard to figure that out? Yeah, it's really conceivable, and I'm sure it happens with more frequency than we'd all be comfortable with. But I don't know, Miles, what do you think? I mean,
I think it's really interesting. You and I have talked about this offline about the fact that someone could have come across the border, or they could have, at least, disappeared across the border. So it's a very interesting idea a- that it necessarily ties directly to Sergio because, because of Sergio's ethnic background. I don't know. I mean, and someone else could have arranged the same thing, right? Obviously, a lot of people point to him. A lot of people point to him and his father, or his father, I should say. So, I understand where you're coming from, Brittany. I do think it's something to really think about the fact that like the difficulty that law enforcement's been having tracing the truck, the difficulty that they've been having actually finding not just the person, but the vehicle, you do have to wonder, did it just disappear? And like there's only a couple of options there, right? It got chopped up or it went over the border and disappeared into another country. So it's a really interesting point. BB June 6812 says there are no images of the garage sale signs. There is no CCTV footage of them being placed or existing at all. I don't doubt that they made them, but I think they are long gone. Also, Sergio changed his story about when the signs were put up. The day of her murder, he said he put them up that morning, but later he claimed he put them up the night before. This is extremely significant in my opinion. My theory is that he told Liz he would put them up on his way to work, and that's why he left early, but he never put them up at all. There are so many other red flags, Ari Sergio. Okay, so we know that Sergio changed the story about when he put the signs up. We've acknowledged that. Everybody's acknowledged that. I think that's something that a lot of people really, really latch onto with this. Again, I'm of the opinion that that could mean a lot of things. Like that could be the shock, the aftermath. I know some of you guys disagree with that. Um, you know, this is a guy who's continually been willing to speak publicly. So I always keep that in mind. I guess there's the idea of hiding in plain sight, but a lot of people would not do that if they were guilty of something. But we do know that he changed his story on when the signs actually went up. The idea that he never put the signs up, that's an interesting one.
I'll tell you, we did ask Detective Michael Ritchie about this, and it is forthcoming in his interview part two that's going to come out. Uh, what's that date? I think it's September 12th. You're going to hear an answer to that from him because we did ask, there's been so much smoke around the fire of Sergio and these signs and when they went up and who knew about the garage sale. And it's all really good questions. So we asked Michael Ritchie that. I don't want to spoil his answer. You guys should see, but he does address this. As for me, because Miles just gave his opinion on it, I also don't really know what to think. I think that because most of this seems to be stuff that he's been confused about or changed his story about in like press interviews and in the aftermath, it does seem possible to me that he's just been overwhelmed and confused by this and he doesn't really have a good memory of it. Maybe they made them the night before, maybe one went up, maybe they put the others up in the morning, or like there's some version of it that's got him turned around. I can see a world where he legitimately has just mixed it up in his head and there's no nefarious reason, or he's getting caught in a lie and he said one thing and then forgot he said it and he said another because he's trying to hide something. That's totally possible too. I just don't know. So I guess stay tuned to hear from the person who has probably a much more involved perspective than me, which is Michael Ritchie. And he'll tell you what he thinks about it. And of course, you guys have the right to feel your way too. I mean, look, this is public knowledge, right? Like Sergio has said two things that conflict publicly. So you guys have every right to notice that, call it a red flag and call it out. Thanks for commenting on it.
Sean was just saying you're going to hear it from the person who knows best. And I think some of you were probably like, oh, did they get the Sergio interview?
Right.
We have not.
He is the one that
So
would know best.
I think that needs to be acknowledged too. I think, Pelagio Texas Beauty had mentioned one of the comments that she put up recently about this case that, hey, Sergio, why won't you talk to these guys? You know, again, people move on. They're sick of talking about things. I mean, I don't want to expose, people's personal information, but there's other cases that we're presently investigating and trying to get people to talk to us about. And there's a mom that I spoke to recently who, you know, was very sweet and very kind when she wrote back, but she was like, we just don't want to talk about it anymore. Like we're keeping abreast of the investigation and we're still hoping for answers, but they're just burnt out on talking about it. And I'm not saying that that's what's going on with Sergio, but I do understand that that does happen sometimes and that everybody deals with their grief differently.
It's really disappointing that we have not yet heard back from Sergio. And I'm saying yet because I'm not closing the door completely. I hope that we can get him on here one day. We will continue our outreach respectfully, as long as we think we reasonably, can be doing that. But yeah, I would love to ask Sergio this question, and I think we said it last week. I mean, this would be exactly what we would want to say, and it would be a opportunity to almost in a professional way just say, "Can you clear some of this up?" I'm not accusing him of anything. I've noticed there's a contradiction. People have concerns. Can you help us shed some light on why you've said both of these things? But without having him sit and be able to explain it, yeah, it's tough. I don't know, but it's certainly worth calling out. Let me read this next comment. It's from Steve5976. It is also about Liz Barraza. He says, I understand there are many theories, and I have heard and seen them all. This case reminds me of the Dan Markle, Florida State Seminoles professor murder around 2013. Dan shows up at his house and is shot assassin style. Witnesses saw the distinctive car, and police went through hours of highway video to locate the car from different areas of the state or another state. You can watch the Dateline episode. They trace the assassins back to the wife's family, who have a dentist's office. I don't think they have arrested the wife, but they've arrested her brother and mother-in-law, plus the three who were actually hired for the killing. Then he goes on to say, I've seen Sergio interviewed many times. He always seems to show up for Elizabeth's events and interviews. That goes a long way with me, as most people who are directly involved can't or won't do that. I think that's a great point. I'll get to in a second. However, what is Sergio's current relationship with his parents? What was Liz's parents' relationship with Sergio's parents? And most importantly, what was Elizabeth's relationship with Sergio's parents? Someone said he had distanced himself from his own parents. Is this true? And why? Sergio and his father worked together doing floors. And with what pool of other workers? I need to know more about the in laws' dynamics if you interview Sergio. I need the in laws, Elizabeth's relationship broken down, and current Sergio relationship with his parents. I fully understand we have a family friend group, a Star Wars group, which is suspicious too, and a work group, all under the same cloud. Woo! A lot of thoughts there. I'll try to keep it, you know, blunt and quick because that's a lot to read through. So, listen, the first thing, yeah, we wish we could ask Sergio that too. We kind of just went over that. If we get him, we'll totally ask him that stuff. I think it's all salient. We do have a little bit of insight into the in-laws. I know that at the time this all happened, um, Sergio had been working with his father, and obviously, like, most of us love our parents, so we can assume that there was that built-in sort of familial relationship. But there was a little tension because some checks had bounced, paychecks, from the father to Sergio, which annoyed him because obviously you want to get paid, and that was becoming a problem. And on top of that, Sergio's father had actually asked him on a couple of occasions to front money to pay the other workers. In other words, hey, son, we don't have it in the business account. Do you mind going to your personal account and paying these four other guys we worked with last week? So you could see how that happening a couple times, plus not getting your own paycheck. Yeah, I would say that was probably a little bit of a bone of contention between the two of them. How bad? I don't really know.
And we
Um,
do know, and you'll see details on this when we put up that second Michael Ritchie interview, that there's reasons why Sergio's dad had these money problems, and they're confirmed. Like, and
yes.
we do have solid information on that coming from the investigator.
Yeah, we talk about this with Michael. I should say that. So that again is a part two thing. We dive a lot deeper into the suspects element of that case in part two, and Sergio's dad is a huge part of that conversation. The other thing is Liz had sort of accidentally discovered Sergio's dad was having an affair, and it's believed that she never did come forward with that information and tell Sergio's wife, but there was a little bit of tension because Sergio was afraid if Liz did anything about it or the dad got too upset that he would lose his job working with the father. So you have this element of the personal life and Sergio's father's torrid affair, and then also the money thing. So I don't know that you would call that a great relationship at the time, but all families are kind of different. What is it? I think Tolstoy said like every family, every happy family is the same. Every unhappy family is unhappy in their own way, or something like some quote like that. And I think that Sergio's family had their own little dynamic going on, and only they can tell us whether or not that was normal and happy for them. To me, it sounds like I'd hate to have those problems with my dad, but some people would probably be happy just to have any relationship with their father. So I don't know where Sergio's at with it.
I love this screen name, by the way. It took me a second, but it's actually great. I think there's a gas leak, says. I do not believe she was trafficked. Yeah, I know that Drew sort of posited that as a possibility. Um, I think when someone that you love has disappeared in this way, and there's an option where they might still be alive, you might want to hold on to that idea, even if it means that they're not living the best lifestyle at that moment. But at least there's hope that they can be brought back, right, and brought into your life and still have the rest of their life. So I do understand the the instinct to lean that way, right?
Yeah, and I've been pretty open on the Jennifer Kesse stuff we've done so far that I do believe someone took her life. I don't take any pleasure in that theory. I don't, it's not because I'm just trying to be cynical. I just feel in my gut that that's what happened. But the problem when you don't have a body in a case like this and it's just a missing person is, all this stuff is still on the table, however plausible we may believe it to be or not to be. And that's going to be a person by person thing. Yeah, I personally don't believe she was trafficked either, but I wouldn't poo-poo somebody who did choose to believe that because we've never found Jennifer. She could be. But yeah, thank you for the comment. And also, yeah, I love your I love your name. It's very funny. The next comment is a little bit brighter. It says Jennifer's parents are wonderful, real heroes. We all love them, and we hope this tragic story resolves soon. Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Actually, one of my favorite things is to see when people comment on our family member guests and just have nice things to say about them, because I think all of us see these stories, these unsolved stories, as like our worst nightmare, right? Things that only happen to you in the darkest moments of your imagining, where these people have actually gone through it. And so that kind of support is great. It doesn't solve the case, it doesn't bring their daughter back, but seeing that people care, I know for a fact that it matters to these people. So thank you for leaving that.
Absolutely. Sub-Zero 2151. Poor police work from the start has left the case even more difficult than it already was. I believe Jennifer knew Spanish and overheard lewd remarks from the workers. I hope the family can get answers. Yeah, poor police work. Obviously, the ball was dropped by the original agency that was handling the case. The fact that the Kessies had to get outside counsel involved and actually pay to get public records, it speaks to that. I think sometimes when the police work isn't great from the beginning, there's a hesitancy to let the family in more. And look, Sean and I are always saying this, but I love cops, and I have really good friends who are cops. But they protect their own, right? That's just the thing. And when you're doing that kind of work and there's everybody seems to be against you, you kind of have to. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it can be bad. So
Yeah, and I will say we have an interview coming out soon that we did with the family's attorney, Paul Sisko, who actually successfully sued to get all the police case materials from Orlando PD. And he has read through all the police reports and all the files. And he himself told us there just seems like there was a lot of stuff that wasn't followed up on, and that's where the case is today, with the FDLE following up on things that were just kind of for one reason or another, either because one investigator promoted out and the file got passed on. Things fall through the cracks over the years, and that definitely happened here. So it's hard to say this was a perfectly run case. Usually, it's not that great investigators solve 100% of their cases. Of course they don't, but 19 years in counting, you'd have to imagine there's probably some stuff that got overlooked.
yeah. And I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but we have been having conversations with someone from the FDLE who's very involved with this case, and she hasn't been allowed to speak to us publicly about the case. And to me, that's a hopeful sign because that
Mhm.
means that it's active and that means that perhaps progress is being made and there's stuff going on that they don't want to jeopardize by talking about it publicly. So,
Well, yeah, and I'll say that in July of this year, 2025, the FDLE made an announcement to say that this case was no longer cold. They flipped it out of the cold bin.
right.
That's all they said. So you have to assume maybe she can't talk because there's finally some traction. They're circling somebody or some group of people. And we might be getting an answer here soon. So, yeah, I mean, for us, we would love to do that interview right now. But if the reason is there's something about to happen that might solve this, we're happy to back off, you know? Hoping that's what it is, Miles.
Absolutely.
Yes, and then the second part of this, where the commenter says Jennifer knew Spanish and overheard lewd remarks from the workers. Yeah, that's true. She did know Spanish, and she could understand it really well. I believe her parents actually told us about that. And she had been getting catcalled. I'm not sure what language the catcalling was in, but either way, she probably, she would have understood what it meant.
I think there's a gas leak again. Could it be an ex or love interest that hasn't been named? It seems more likely this was someone known to her. So we are going to go pretty in depth on that in the suspect video that we have coming up. So keep an eye out for that one because there definitely were some people that Jennifer had known in the past who were strongly looked at in this case and that we didn't really cover in our interview with Drew and Joyce or in our initial case breakdown. So keep an eye out for that suspect video that we're doing because we do name the people and we do go into everything that's known about them.
Autumn Fragrance 6326 said the Cafones left her door unlocked. So I have to admit, I needed to look that word up. It means low life. And at first I was like, is she talking about Jennifer? Like she left her door unlocked? And if so, that would be kind of a nasty thing to say. But then I realized, no, I think she might be referencing the maintenance workers who had keys to that building might have left a door unlocked and somebody got in there who shouldn't have been in there. And I think, at least generously to this commenter, I think that's what they meant.
Yeah, I that was my take on it actually, because I remember when we first saw the comment, we were texting back and forth, and I was like, no, I think they're calling the workers a low lives. But we don't know that that's the case, but we do know that some of the guys who were working in that building did have skeleton keys. We do know that people had access to the building. We do know that they were sleeping in some of those unoccupied apartments. These are all facts that are on the record. So certainly a theory, that I wouldn't say it's certainly an intelligent theory, autumn fragrance, it's quite possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Final comment here. Janie88 full FUL. She says, love and peace to you both. Thank you, Janie. Cardinals are the messages. Heart emoji, celebration emoji. So beautiful. Yeah, thank you for the message of peace and love. And I think what she's referencing with the Cardinals is um Joyce Kessie talking about how she notices Cardinals, and that's kind of a thing that they have where it's sort of like Jennifer in a way, right? When she sees that bird appear, it's almost in a spiritual sort of message from her daughter. So that's a really nice thing to leave. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks everybody for the interest that you're showing in these cases. And as I said in a post that I did on the YouTube page, we have been speaking with Drew and Joyce, and they've been really, really, really touched by all the people who are showing an interest and all the people leaving comments and how many people still care about Jennifer's disappearance. So thanks. Let's keep it going. Let's see if this thing can get solved.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys. These are always kind of fun videos for us to make because it's one thing for us to talk to these families or these investigators and film these interviews, but then to put it out and see what you guys think and hear your interesting thoughts, which sometimes are totally like, wow, that's a great insight, or things that we have already talked about, but they're coming up. No matter what it is, we're always really interested in reading these. So keep it coming. If you haven't already liked and subscribed, give it a consideration. We would certainly appreciate if you did. And that being said, see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.